Hello, guys and dolls. Welcome back to my podcast, Conversations with Zulia. I'm your hostess, Zulia Lorraine, and today is Saturday, September 7th, 2024. In today's episode, I'm doing a Let's Go episode called Worst Celebrity Mothers, since and all these celebrities, these Let's Go's, they all be pretty famous worst since about September. September is the worst month to me. And in this list, I'll pretty much be counting down well-known celebrity mothers, and by celebrity mothers, I'm not referring to celebrities that have mothers. I'm referring to the mothers of well-known celebrities and historical figures, and pretty much their days ago parenting, or how pretty much how their parenting affected their children and the shady things they've done during their children's fame. And what I'm ranking them is based on pretty much information that's been out there over years and what their children have stated in interviews. And the first person I'm going to kick off with is number 6, Zelma Bullock, the mother of Tina Turner. Now, for those unfamiliar, if doing a lot of research on Zelma Bullock from watching What's Love Got to Do with It and pretty much doing research online, her portrayal in the movie wasn't that far off. Now, for those unfamiliar, the backstory with Zelma and her husband Floyd, they had 3 daughters. One that died as a child, and 2 that lived to adulthood, which was Aileen and Anna Mae Bullock, aka Tina. And when Floyd and Zelma had a tumultuous relationship, which resulted in Zelma taking Aileen with her and leaving Floyd, while Tina was left to raise with her grandmother. I'm not sure if it's her maternal grandmother or her paternal grandmother, but I do know that Tina was raised by a grandmother up until when she was a teenager. When her grandmother died, Tina moved in with Zelma, and when she moves in, Zelma pretty much tells Tina not to guilt trip her for pretty much leaving her behind to be raised by a grandmother. And it gets worse when Tina pursues fame. Ike pretty much pays off Zelma to pretty much allow Tina, aka Anna Mae, to live and work with Ike. Concerned fact, which is very problematic. Concerned fact, Tina is literally a young adult in her early 20s, and it gets worse when Ike and Tina get married. When during at a party celebrating the success of Ike and Tina, Zelma had the nerve to tell Tina that she should be grateful for the people who got her there. Concern of which is ironic. Concern fact, pretty much Zelma, like, it was all I understand the stories, but Zelma literally, instead of taking two of her daughters, she took her eldest daughter Aileen and pretty much left Tina to be raised by her grandmother. And then the biggest thing of all, when Tina tried to get away from Mike and escape her abusive marriage to Ike, Zelma pretty much sold her out to Ike by telling Ike of Tina's location. And you thought it couldn't get any worse, but it gets worse. As Tina stated publicly in a documentary, even after pretty much financially helping her mom out and getting her house, she still pretty much wasn't grateful, even going as far as to contribute Tina's success to her significant others, not Tina's success herself, which that's a shady thing to do, because in fact, the circumstances. And another aspect to also really put into consideration was the fact that Zelma and Aileen, they both kept in touch with Ike even after Tina and Ike divorced. Like, I remember, like, there was an article I read on Ebony where they interviewed Aileen, and the Ebony article covered pretty much Ike's life and death. And when interviewing Aileen, she still considered Ike a brother-in-law, despite the fact her and Tina wasn't married to Ike anymore. So, which is another to consider, so take of that info if you will. And the reason why I listed Zelma as number 6 is, yeah, Zelma, she was not a great mother in any stretch of imagination, but with the other one, the mothers I'm going to list on this list, she did emotional damage to Tina. And number 5 is Deborah McCurdy, the mother of Jeanette McCurdy. And I know everyone is familiar with Deborah McCurdy through Jeanette's book, I'm Glad My Mother Died. There's a reason the book has that name for a reason. Deborah McCurdy was pretty much your typical, the type of stage mom that had dreams of finding fame, but pretty much didn't get to find those dreams, but wound up pretty much living those dreams through their children, like Abram Quintanilla. And for what Jeanette stated herself, her mother was pretty much abusive, pretty much expecting her body without a doctor, pretty much subjected her physical to emotional, crazy abuse that led to, and pretty much Deborah forcing Jeanette into a career in Hollywood, and the abuse she inflicted on her is the reason why Jeanette doesn't want, pretty much left acting behind and never looked back. And it's a shame, really, because in fact, she was hilarious as Sam, and I call, even though I'm not fond of Sam, the character, for how she treats Freddie. But yeah, Deborah, she was pretty much your extreme stage mom, and I'll leave it at that. Number 4 is Maria Cole, the mother of Natalie Cole. And Natalie Cole was pretty much born into a successful family and had a successful upbringing. Her father was literally legendary pianist / crooner Nat King Cole, for Christ's sakes, and due to her father Nat being a successful singer, pretty much Natalie and her siblings lived a very privileged upper class lifestyle. Like Natalie put it simply in her movie Living for Love, that she lived like a white girl dipped in chocolate. And I remember watching that movie when it used to be shown in Centric, and in the movie, the only sibling portrayed in the movie was her sister Carol, her adopted sister Carol. When in actuality, it was just Carol who was Maria's niece that she raised as her own. They had 3 other siblings, an adopted brother named Nat Kelly Cole, and twin siblings. And I forgot the name of twin siblings, but I don't want to butcher their names. But the reason why Maria Cole is on there, because she's quite a character. Not only did she literally didn't give her daughters enough time to grieve and pretty much sent them back to boarding school after their father passed away, which, if I lost a parent, I would not pretty much go back to school. And not only that, but also the fact that she didn't want Natalie to pursue a singing career, and gave Natalie a hard time about it, even stating that her career was going to be short-lived. But not only that, but Maria was one of those typical bougie rich people, like, who look down on people that are lower her, because Natalie recalled how Maria didn't allow her to socialize with the black maids working for them, and how she looked, and how she caught her mom sneakily eating chitlins on a fancy wine glass. And then that's not getting into how she had Carol, pretty much sent Carol to live in a girls' school when she fell pregnant with a white classmate's child, and had her give up said child for adoption, which, I'm not rationalizing it, but concerning the time period, I don't know if Maria was in her right to do that. Let me know in the comments if you think so. But yeah, she's one of those snobbish, emotionally abusive mothers because in fact her pretty much not allowing her children to grieve and pretty much caused, in so many words, kind of caused Natalie's addiction issues because about Natalie, she wasn't able to grieve the death of her father, and they pretty much didn't grieve together. And the next mother on my list at number 3 is Priscilla Presley, and I have a lot to say about her. Like, Priscilla Presley, in my opinion, and right before I get into Priscilla Presley, another thing I forgot to mention with Maria was that Maria, it just popped in my head, Maria, she literally, in the 90s, she literally sued her children for royalties. Which it must have been first admit to me as how crappy of a mother she is, for you to sue your own children over your late husband's royalties. Like, that's Priscilla Presley-esque shit. And speaking of Priscilla Presley, the fact that Priscilla sued her own granddaughter over her estate speaks volumes about her character. But then again, if you look at it, considering how her 2 children that she had turned out, Priscilla was not a great mother at all. Namely, the first child from her golden goose, aka Elvis, who was also her abuser, she literally pretty much forced her into Scientology as a kid. Pretty much didn't do anything when when her boyfriend was acting appropriately with her, and then pretty much controlled Lisa's life. And then with Priscilla, people treat Priscilla as Elvis's widow, despite the fact when Elvis was engaged to a woman named Ginger Aldred when he passed away. Number 2, to be a widow, you have to widow/widower. You have to be married to the person that died. Like, for example, what's in it? Linda Ramone is a widow since she remained married to Johnny until his death. Iman is a widower since she remained married to David Bowie until his death. A person that's divorced with someone that's not a widow, but people treat Priscilla as one because of how she took over it ran Graceland, which the only reason why she ran Graceland because the people that Elvis left his estate to, Vernon and his father Vernon and his grandmother Minnie Mae, they all died when Lisa was young. But the reason why I listed Priscilla, not just because of her suing her own granddaughter, but the fact she raised her daughter in Scientology, pretty much left her to having a Scientology-esque childhood. And then also her pretty much controlling Lisa's life the same way Elvis controlled hers. Like, she gave all of her son-in-laws a hard time, especially Michael. And before y'all say, oh, Priscilla's mistraumatized, Michael's justified because Michael's using her, no one, we didn't use logic. Why the heck would Michael use Lisa Marie and Priscilla for fame? Michael was already a global superstar. He didn't need him for fame. I feel like it was the other way around, considering fact. Let's be real. The Scientology, they want to take advantage of Michael's fame to pretty much get younger people to become Scientologists. And plus, not only it was just Priscilla that was giving Michael a hard time, it was also the Stanleys that was giving Michael a hard time, including that brilliant Christian hack of a pastor, Rick. Oh, and it gets worse, very worse. The other child she has was with a failed actor who literally lied about his nationality. I'm not bigs up. She literally had a child, her son Navarone, with a dude that was a failed actor who lied about his nationality, claiming that he was Italian when in actuality he was Brazilian. And when Navarone confronted this dude about it, he pretty much disowned him. But that's not backstory. Overall, Priscilla was pretty much a control freak mother that pretty much failed her children in so many ways. Concerning how both Lisa Marie and her son turned out, then her suing her own granddaughter after her mother passed away, which is cold-blooded, and further cements her as a horrible person. But moving on. Number 2 is Jane Carter the mother of Nick and Aaron Carter. I know a lot of people with Jane Carter, the fact that 3 of her 5 children have died from drug-related caused deaths is a sign that she did not do her job as a mother well. For example, the 2000s reality show House of Carter pretty much gave an insight to their dysfunctionality, and according to the interviews that Nick and Angel, the 2 surviving siblings, gave, they pretty much grew up in a very dysfunctional household where their dad, Robert, was an alcoholic, and the family, they were always at each other's throats, which no wonder why Nick and his siblings turned out the way they did. And the fact that Nick and Angel, Aaron's twin sister, they're the only ones that are pretty much still alive. Even though with Angel, that was because she was able to get counseling thanks to Nick, and she's pretty much lives thriving. Then Nick, he wound up having his own substance abuse issues, and he pretty much had a found family with Backstreet Boys. And not only did Jane and her ex-husband Robert raise their kids in a toxic environment, but Jane and Robert pretty much screwed up Aaron's money to the point Aaron pretty much barely had anything by the time he was able to access his trust. Yes, Jane and Robert, they literally mismanaged Aaron's trust fund to the point he barely got jack-ish when he accessed it. And that will lead to Aaron pretty much revamping himself as a reality TV star to pretty much make dough. If you really look at it, the Carter siblings' lives in itself is sad. First, Leslie, who pretty much got screwed over out of his singing career, she dies in 2012 of a drug overdose, leaving behind a baby girl and her husband. Then, a decade later, Aaron winds up dying of a drug overdose after his multiple rebrands and pretty much being in his troubles. And then a year later, Bobby Jean, the oldest sister, winds up dying of an overdose a few months after getting arrested for drugs. The whole family is tragic, but it's not more tragic than our number 1 pick, which is Ederline DeBarge. Now, I know Ederline DeBarge had passed away earlier this year, but just because she passed away does not mean that I'm just going to give her a pass for pretty much being a horrible mother. Now, the reason why I listed Ederline DeBarge as the worst celebrity mom, because Ederline is the matriarch of the DeBarge family, and for those unfamiliar with the DeBarge family history, the DeBarge siblings, Bunny, Bobby, Tommy, Randy, Mark, Elle, James, Chico, and their twin siblings, Peaches and Daryl. They were a family based in Detroit who were the offspring of an interracial couple, a black mother, Ederline, and a white father, Robert. And for those of you who read the Bart's family story, the older kids, they were subjected to physical and sexual abuse by their dad, while the mom was pretty much barely did nothing. In fact, when Bunny tried to tell her mom about the abuse, her mom didn't believe her. And she moved, not to mention when she and the kids moved out and moved somewhere else, living with a relative that took them in, she pretty much went back to them. And before y'all say, they didn't have any help back then, they didn't have any homeless shelter for women and all that. Ederline literally had a village of siblings. Some of them were pastors at church that was willing to take care of them. So yes, she did have help in regards to her family, but she pretty much allowed that monster to abuse her children. And the reason why the abuse stopped was because her brother pretty much beat the crap out of the dad, which is on itself. And for those asking how Ederline and Robert's marriage ended, Robert tried to, back when they only had a few children, Robert tried to divorce Ederline or something to that effect, but Ederline begged him to stay. But Robert, in the early 70s, Robert pretty much left Ederline for another woman who also happened to be the same age as Bobby. Which makes you go, wow, this woman, she literally stayed with this white dude, knowing that how he was pretty much mistreating, terrorizing her children. In fact, before they got married, Ederline was warned by her soon-to-be mother-in-law that Robert was a red flag. But she pretty much just dismissed it as the mom being racist. And also, an interesting fact you know is that Robert DeBarge is from Cicero, Illinois, and Cicero was known to be a hostile town for black people, so make of it what you will. And just by description I described to you, the DeBarges, they pretty much lived in a horror movie. I know people want to give Joe Jackson flack for pretty much being straight as kids, but Joe should not be put in the same circle as Robert Sr. May he rest in hell with gasoline shoes on. And you just thought that things getting worse, but it gets worse. A few years after Ederline and Robert divorced, she wound up marrying this felon named George Rodriguez, and the stepdad, Jorge, which I can never find any pictures of online. He wound up abusing the younger 3 children, as revealed by Chico on Creflo Dollar. Which, she has quite taste in men. And as we all know, the DeBarge's trauma led to them turning to drugs, and when they turned drugs, she had a nerve to bring Hollywood for the reason why the kids went to that path. Like, don't get me wrong, we all know Hollywood is a terrible place, but your kids were already screwed up before they even became famous, and like, instead of blaming everyone else for your kids' troubles, you should have gotten them help and therapy and rehab. But instead of getting them help, because she's also a very religious person, so she's one of those people that think that if you pray to pray your issues away, which it doesn't work. But instead of trying to get her children help for their drug addictions and their traumas, she pretty much took advantage of the children's fame, pretty much. Like, as Tommy wrote Rose's book, even though, considering the circumstances, Ederline went behind Tommy's back to get custody of Tommy and Ducky's kids, and to pretty much get access to the settlement he earned from his car accident, which he spent on herself instead of his children, despite the fact there were other grandchildren in the predicament as Tommy and Ducky. And also, according to Tommy, the mom tended to show favoritism to which kid was the breadwinner at the moment. In regards to Ederline is by far the worst celebrity mom ever. She literally sat there and allowed her children to get abused by their demon of a father. not leaving the dad until the dad divorced her for another woman. And then later on wound up marrying this ex-con who wound up abusing her younger children. And then took advantage of her children's fame to pretty much find her way in the spotlight. Oh, and let's not forget her milking some 30-year-old situation with Janet Jackson, getting some mentally ill person to claim herself as just Janet Jackson. Or in fact, I would not be surprised if either James or Italy sold that story to the tabloids for money, considering how money and fame hungry Elaine DeBarge is. But yeah, Elaine, she's the worst mother of the year. And she should not be romanticized or celebrated anyway. So that's it. That's my top 6 for celebrity mothers. Do you have any more celebrity mothers? Leave it in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. The next video will pretty much is a episode analysis of the blind spotting episode Ghost Dad, where I discuss the A plot and the B plot, and pretty much how the poor execution of blind spotting's discussion about blackness and colorism. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can follow this podcast on Spotify, Anchor, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and wherever podcasts is available. Be sure to follow the Facebook and Instagram pages of Conversations with Leah. If you want to contact me about anything or leave comments or feedback, email me at CWXpodcast@outmail.com. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye!